Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host Brett Murphy, and for today's video it is going to be another Cinema Showdown. And it is a big one, folks. It is going to be Tobey Maguire versus Andrew Garfield versus Tom Holland to determine who is the best Spider-Man once and for all. So enough time has now passed since the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, so I feel comfortable discussing, and therefore I will, the events that transpire in that film, completely filled with spoilers. So just so you're aware, this is a no-holds-barred kind of video. I will be discussing very much so in depth all three of Tobey Maguire's movies, both of Andrew Garfield's movies, and all three of Tom Holland's movies. May as well get right into the spoilers too. Of course, the main reason that I am doing this is because all three of these Spider-Men appeared in the movie together. So we finally got to see how each of them would interact together on screen and really got more of an idea of the different flavor that each of them bring to this iconic character. On this last side note, I wanted to mention that this will be a Cinema Showdown unlike any other. If you've watched any of my previous Cinema Showdown versus videos, you will know that it's always just one thing versus one thing. This is the first time that I have ever done three. And with that, I just can't do this topic justice in just 5 rounds. So for the first time ever, I will be expanding the Cinema Showdown to 7 rounds. So, will it be the old dog, the veteran, the OG Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, the early 2010s new age Andrew Garfield, or the new kid on the block, Tom Holland? Well, we're about to find out. Now, before we get into the actual showdown itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my Cinema Showdowns. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so, without further ado, let's hop right into things. Round 1. Suits. When it comes to the live-action Spider-Man suits that we have gotten so far, everybody has their favorite. Surprisingly, throughout his 3-movie run, Tobey Maguire only had a total of 2 suits. The original suit that many know and love, as I've mentioned, and then in Spider-Man 3, he gets the black symbiote suit, which is just the exact same suit, but in black. I, like everyone else, love the original suit. To this very day, it still looks phenomenal. I love the spider design, it fits so well with this world, and it was the first great live-action spider suit we got. I've gotta be honest, as a fan of the 90s show, I was pretty let down by the black symbiote suit in Spider-Man 3. I don't like how it's just the regular suit, but black. I wish they went for a full design change and it more accurately replicated the look of the cartoon and comics. When it comes to Andrew Garfield, he saw 2 suits in his 2 movies. The suit from the first The Amazing Spider-Man movie has been hotly debated by the fan base for a decade now. Is it a cool, sleek, modern redesign, or is it absolute trash? I'm on the side that I really like it. I like how it feels so different from the Raimi movies. I like the new spider design, how the colors and webbing have been ever so slightly altered, and how the eye lenses are just sunglasses. However, I think that most can agree that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit was a major upgrade in every way. This is the best looking Spider-Man suit to many fans, and for good reason. Then we land on Tom Holland, and his suits may not be quite iconic just yet. I say yet with so much emphasis because we have had 2 decades with Tobey's Spider-Man and 1 decade with Andrew's, while Tom's is very much so fresh and new. As of this point in time, Tom has technically had 8 suits. His homemade one, the first Stark suit, the Iron Spider suit, the Stealth suit, the Far From Home suit, the Reverse suit in No Way Home, and then the slightly modified suit that mixes the Far From Home suit and the Iron Spider suit, and then the new suit we saw in the last minute that looked the most accurate to the 60s Spider-Man cartoon. Okay, this is already a tough one, because I obviously love the OG Raimi suit. I mean, it's the suit that most people think of when they think of live-action Spider-Man. It's iconic. However, Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit may be the best looking we've gotten yet. But I'm actually going to be giving this first round to Tom Holland. Tom has delivered double the suits of Andrew and Tobey combined. Sure, they may not be iconic yet, but I have no doubt that in the years to come, they will be. And I'm going to deliver one hot take right here: Tom has not had a single bad suit yet. Say what you want about it all just being Stark tech, or how one of the suits is just technically another one that we've already seen Inside Out, or whatever else you want to say, but these suits look damn good. And as one final point, he is the only one that has suits with adjustable and expressive eyes. Round 2. Love interest. Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy gave us the main love interest of Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, aka MJ, the red-headed hopeful actress, childhood crush, girl next door. Some see her as the definitive Spidey love interest. While I agree in some respects, I disagree in others. Her and Tobey's chemistry is pretty good, but throughout this trilogy I often find some of her acting and line delivery can be kind of wooden and lifeless. They have their iconic moments, but is she the best? Andrew Garfield's duology gave us Emma Stone's portrayal of the blonde-haired, brilliant, quirky, and determined Gwen Stacy. Hers and Andrew's chemistry is immaculate. They're both nerdy, goofy, and they play off of each other very well. She also takes a far more hands-on approach than any of the other Spider-Girls when it comes to the Spider-Man antics, like the role she plays in both of the film's finales. Although their on-again, off-again nonsense in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 does annoy me, their chemistry continues to shine through in this very believable love story. Tom's trilogy offered us up 2 love interests, really. The main love interest in Homecoming is Laura Harrier's Liz Allen, but nothing ever really happens between the two, and she moves away at the end and she's never seen again. So the main love interest I will be focusing on is Zendaya's version of MJ, Michelle Jones. Their chemistry is fantastic. They're adorably awkward because they're both seen as outcasts, the weirdos, and their dynamic is very believable despite them actually being 2 of the best looking people on the planet. Each of these leading ladies have their merits. Kirsten Dunst is the original Spider-Girl, and her and Tobey work very well together. That final shot in Spider-Man 3 will forever be etched in my mind. Zendaya and Tom Holland are, as I said, adorably awkward, and their relationship does feel very high school, new to this whole thing, as it should. But I'm going to be giving round 2 to Andrew Garfield. Peter and Gwen's relationship is likely the best aspect of both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Their chemistry is undeniable, and she is involved in the spider action more than any of her counterparts. Round 3. Villains. Tobey's original trilogy offered us up 5 villains. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1, Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2, and then the third film in the trilogy gave us 3 villains with James Franco, Thomas Hayden Church, and Topher Grace's New Goblin, Sandman, and Venom respectively. Each offer up a new, unique challenge for our hero and incredibly dynamic fight sequences. Andrew Garfield's 2 films gave us 2 villains? No, 3. No, 4. I think it's technically 4. We've got Riz Ahmed's Lizard in the first, and then the sequel mostly focuses on Jamie Foxx's Electro, but shoehorned into the end are Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin and Paul Giamatti's Rhino. None of these villains are real standouts. Lizard does his job, but the CGI hasn't aged that well, and his master plan is odd to say the least. And I do believe he needed a bit more character development. Jamie Foxx's Electro was a great idea, but was executed poorly. Tom's is also a very interesting case. He has Michael Keaton's Vulture in Homecoming, Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio in the sequel, and then his third film is No Way Home, which is a multiverse film that reintroduces Dafoe's Goblin, Molina's Doc Ock, Sandman, Lizard, and Fox's Electro. Vulture and Mysterio are easily among the best villains in the MCU, even if it does kind of annoy me that they're really essentially Iron Man villains in this universe. As for No Way Home, it is a bit trickier because none of them are really his villains. Dafoe is just as good, if not better, in No Way Home, but Doc Ock turns good very quickly, Jamie Foxx is a completely different character really, and then the other 2 are glorified henchmen more than anything and don't do very much. While Tom technically again offers up the most, and Andrew gave us some very unique villains that we hadn't had before, the clear winner for this round is of course Tobey Maguire. I mean, Dafoe and Molina alone take this round from the other two. I also really liked Thomas Hayden Church's portrayal of the Sandman. James Franco's Green Goblin was a letdown and also turned good towards the end of the movie anyway, while the less we say about Topher Grace's Venom, the better. But once again, Dafoe and Molina are among the best comic book movie villains in general anyway, while also delivering some of the best comic book movie throwdowns, like the final fight in the original Spider-Man and of course, the subway fight in Spider-Man 2.
Round 4. Who has the better movies? Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire delivered us a whole trilogy, the first simply being titled Spider-Man, which was released in 2002, Spider-Man 2, which dropped in 2004, and then finally Spider-Man 3, which premiered in 2007. The first two films have both been highly praised over the years and made bank at the box office. Many still consider these to be the best that the webhead has to offer, delivering exhilarating action, relatable characters, an iconic score, and memorable villains. Whereas the third film's production was notoriously plagued by studio interference, and it was such a dreadful experience that a fourth film was scrapped. The film isn't awful by any means, as I do still enjoy aspects of it, but it is a very mixed bag overall, and in my personal opinion, the weakest Spider-Man flick. Andrew, on the other hand, only managed to give us two films, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 from 2012 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 from 2014, respectively. These films certainly offered up a new, fresh, and more modern take on the character. The whole tone, look, and feel was very different from what the previous trilogy had to offer, and to this very day, Spider fans are very conflicted about this duology. Some love these two flicks, and others hate them. Are they underrated or just plain bad and unnecessary? Everyone has their own opinion, but after Spider-Man No Way Home dropped, fans have been revisiting them with a new set of eyes, and now #MakeTasm3 has been trending constantly as fans call for Andrew's Spider-Man return.
Tom Holland, just like Tobey Maguire, successfully landed himself a full trilogy alongside director Jon Watts. It has gone by a few different names, but I just like to call it the Home Trilogy,
which consists of Homecoming from 2017, Far From Home, which released in 2019, and then finally the most recent entry for this character, at least as of the recording of this video, Spider-Man No Way Home from December of 2021, which saw all three of these Spider-Men triumphantly unite on screen together. This trilogy has been received mostly well, with overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics, but the fan base itself has been a bit more critical, often citing that this version of the character is essentially just Iron Man Jr., and that he always has help. I've never seen it that way personally, as I rather enjoy each of these films, but it is an argument you'll see against these movies quite often.
It may be a bit closer than you think for this one. Yes, it is true that Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi caught lightning in a bottle twice in a row, but in my mind, their third film is the weakest of them all. Andrew and Webb's films delivered a more fresh and modern take that stands apart from the other two trilogies, and I actually find those two films are quite underrated, as they by far have the most style. Tom and Watts delivered us a very well-rounded trilogy that capped things off by delivering us a live-action Spider-Verse movie and setting up Peter's next major arc. This one is a round that is really going to depend on personal preference, but for me, I am going to be giving this round to Tobey Maguire. His first two films alone to me are superior to anything that either of the other two Spider-Man have to offer. Aside from Tom's No Way Home, which is very much so still his movie, but also includes the other two Spider-Men, it did make the round a bit tighter, but still going with Tobey. Nevertheless, I'll end this round off by saying that I do believe Spider-Man 2 is still the best live-action version of the character that we have on offer.
Round 5. Who had the best story arc?
Oh boy. This is gonna be a tough one.
Tobey's Spider-Man learns a new, beautiful lesson in each of his movies, making him a very layered and well-rounded character by the trilogy's close. In the first, he learns the coveted, with great power comes great responsibility. In the second, he learns what it truly means to be Spider-Man, both for him and the people of New York, as he loses his powers through his inner conflict, but soon learns what it means to be a hero. And in his third film, he learns about forgiveness and letting go, as he and Harry make amends and he forgives Flint Marko for the death of Uncle Ben. Andrew learns similar lessons. His first movie is almost identical in terms of messaging to Tobey's first. He learns what it means to have all of this power. He learns the responsibility of it as he first goes down a very dark path. But it's not just his spider abilities, but also his brilliant mind. His second film is a bit more convoluted and offers up some mixed messages. But above all else, he learns about loss. He learns about letting go and that sometimes what we want ourselves isn't always what's best for everyone. And in that final scene, he returns to the Spidey suit to become who the city needs him to be once more.
Tom's is indeed a bit trickier because he doesn't really get a full-blown origin story like his two counterparts did. Tom still does, however, learn little lessons here and there throughout his movies.
Like in the first, he learns what it means to be Spider-Man, with the whole "if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it," and the final "come on Spider-Man" scene. In the second film, he wants to try and be a normal kid once again, at least for a little while. But after his Avengers antics, he's now a full-blown world-saving hero, so he has to understand those responsibilities as well as conquering his spider senses and his fears. But what really makes Tom's arc special is that it really is one big arc that carries across all three of his movies, concluding in No Way Home, where he learns some much-needed lessons from the past two Spider-Man, and by the time the credits roll, he has lost everything.
I'd also like to mention that many people online are saying that all three of Tom's films act as his origin story, and in his next trilogy, he will be the true comic book accurate version of the character. I think the individual lessons that Tobey learns in each of his movies are the most impactful ones. But Andrew learns his lessons in a much harder fashion as he suffers the most loss and goes down some very dark paths. But I will actually, in the end, be giving this round to Tom Holland. In my mind, Tom has had the fullest and most complete arc of the three. He actively learns and grows across his trilogy, not to mention he has those Avengers appearances, carrying his lessons with him, making his whole trilogy a very fulfilling and satisfying arc.
Round 6. Who is the best Peter Parker?
These final two rounds will no doubt be the most controversial and hotly debated of them all.
Tobey gives us a very shy, soft-spoken, and early 2000s Peter Parker. We only get brief glimpses into his true intellect. He's the only one of the three that actually works for the Daily Bugle and does his whole photography thing. He makes his own suit, and, I said in the previous round, learns new lessons with each and every movie. Do I think he looks far too old in the first movie to be in high school? Yeah. Is that a major gripe? No, not really, cause they graduate a few scenes later. He's the only Spider-Man we see move out, try to live on his own, and really struggle with that Spider-Man in normal life balance. He tries to go to college, hold down a job, and get married. He suffers with these real-life adult struggles that we don't see the other two tackle. But I've also always found his version of Peter Parker to be not necessarily what I have in mind as awkward Peter Parker. Sometimes his dialogue's a bit clunky and often memeable. Andrew's Peter is the one that by far puts his intellect to the best use. We see him create his own web shooters, attempt to cure Dr. Connors, and there's just overall a lot more science and math talk with him than the others. They took a much more modern day hipster approach to him with the glasses they chose, the skateboarding, the outfits, etc. But in my mind, this is the sort of Peter Parker I think of a lot of the time when I read through, say, the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. He's clever, he's witty, but also fumbles over his words and himself a lot as he awkwardly stumbles through his high school and his love story. Tom's version is by far the youngest and most accurate to a high school Peter Parker. We get a brief glimpse of that big brain of his in certain aspects. He plays up the whole super awkward, nerdy outcast type very well, as he often can't find the right words or trips and stumbles and can't quite figure out the right thing to say or do. He's very down to earth despite all that he's seen, cause he's also the only one of the three who's gotten to tag along with the Avengers. More often than not, too, he has that wide-eyed, shocked look on his face. But it suits the character very well. Despite him being very confident in the real world, his Peter Parker persona is spot on, especially as a younger version who's still trying to figure all of this out.
It's a very close one between the three because they all have their own merits and are very much so a product of their time. Tobey is the perfect Peter for the early 2000s. Andrew was the perfect Peter for that early 2010s era. And Tom is the perfect modern Peter. However, I think I'm going to have to give this round to Andrew Garfield. He is exactly how I picture Peter in my head when reading through the comics, or other stories, or even looking at the cartoons or the Insomniac video games. To me, they all just scream Andrew Garfield. And now, after his appearance in No Way Home, he is getting more love and appreciation for his portrayal than ever.
Round 7. Who is the best Spider-Man?
Alright, we've reached it. The final and definitive round to determine who is the best Spider-Man.
Tobey's Spider-Man is exactly who Spider-Man should be. He's quippy, he's strong, he's determined, and willing to sacrifice himself for others. He's exactly who this version of Peter Parker wants to be. In his mind, when he puts on the mask, he becomes everything he always wished Peter could be. He gets the girl, saves the city, and is always able to do the right thing. I could really say all of the exact same things about Andrew's Spider-Man, except I would go a step further and say that I think his Spider-Man is the funniest. I've always found him to be a bit more charming and clever than the others. However, I don't necessarily find his heroics are on display quite as much as Tobey's, for instance. We don't often get to see the crowd chanting his name. We don't really see his relationship with the media, and he doesn't get the big set pieces like Tobey did either. But he absolutely nails the personality and the power of the suit. Lastly, but certainly not least, is of course Tom, who implements much of both of the previous Spider-Man while also adding his own flair too. However, I feel he's still got a lot of growing up to do. His quips are there, but they're much more mild and often just come from his fish out of water like scenarios, where he's almost always what comes off as frightened by the threat in front of him, and he uses light humor to sort of cope. He does certainly save more than just the day though. This Spider-Man has traveled through space and fought massive alien armies, defeated an army of drones, and took on the majority of the previous two's rogues gallery. Where we last see him in No Way Home, he has learned some valuable lessons, and I'm sure we will get a far more mature take on the character in the next trilogy.
I know I've said it a lot, but I do actually believe that this is the toughest round. Each of these guys embody different aspects of what I love about the character. Andrew is super quippy, agile, smart, and all around a likable Spider-Man. Tom's Spidey was thrown into all of this chaos at far too young of an age. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, I mean, far too young, not Tom Holland. But he holds his own. He perfectly embodies the youth of the character the best, and the whole learning through experiences aspect. He's not necessarily the funniest of the bunch, but I'd say he is the most relatable, at least to me. But at the end of the day, I am going to be giving this final round and the crown to Tobey Maguire. I do think that Tobey is all around the best Spider-Man. He mocks his villains mercilessly. He is always willing to do whatever is necessary. And I think he has the best overall Spider-Man moments. Whenever I think of Spider-Man, I think of Tobey's. He's the perfect embodiment of all aspects of the character, and represents all of my favorite parts of what makes Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Not to mention, he does indeed have the best Spider-Man woos. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my winner. While you're at it, feel free to let me know who you would have chosen for each round and your winner overall. Plus, feel free to suggest what Cinema Showdown you'd like to see me cover next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.